So who would you be most worried about fighting at a general election? Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss?
Neither of them. They've both been stooges in Boris Johnson's government. They've both voted for the tax hikes that people have seen. They've both created this cost of living crisis and propped up a Prime Minister that is engulfed in sleaze, lies and partying while people are in lockdown. So I would relish the thought of going head-to-head with either one of them. I think they're both just as complicit. This is the continuation of what's happened in Downing Street and what's been happening with this government for a long time now, and it shows they've got no new ideas and they've not got the future of the country at hand.
Well, I guess, Rishi Sunak would say that he resigned from Boris Johnson's government. Liz Truss would say that she's promising a different economic policy. It's not completely continuity, Boris, is it?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they try and move away from that over the summer. But, Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor who did put the tax hikes up, and Liz Truss did support it and did vote for it at the time. And, Rishi did stay in the government for a very long time, knowing full well he was in number 11. If neighbours were having a party, I think I'd have known about it. In fact, he was fined himself for a fixed penalty notice. I think they're both just as disastrous, and it is continuation of the same old, maybe not Boris Johnson, but the same old Conservative Party and what they've been trying to get away with.
So you say you wouldn't be frightened about fighting either of them in an election. You told LBC that Boris Johnson had a magic where he was able to get through to the public. So do you think he was more of an electoral threat for Labour than either of these two?
Well, he clearly was, because in 2019, Labour suffered a significant defeat, and that was because Boris Johnson promised the electorate something, and he did have something that the electorate connected to.
Do you think these two have something the electorate
No, and this is the problem. The problem what Boris Johnson did is he broke that trust with the electorate. After getting that 80-seat majority, he broke the trust. The two now propped him up after the public had seen that Boris Johnson had squandered that victory that he had, lied to the British public, put taxes up, not dealt with the issues that they're facing at the moment with the cost of living crisis. And the two contenders now were part of that government, and they don't have that connection with the public, I don't believe. And I think the public have had enough of the Conservative Party, because they've seen, even in this leadership contest, they've been fighting each other and trying to distance themselves from decisions that they've been part of.
If they do distance themselves from the last government, promise a new agenda, do you think that actually they have a mandate to carry it out, or do you think they should re-seek a mandate through an election?
I think they should re-seek a mandate. I think the general public are very angry. We saw that with the by-election results recently. The public are very angry with the Conservative Party. The problem started with when Boris Johnson broke the trust with the British people. And then because of people like Rishi and Liz, who propped him up in the cabinet, allowed that to continue, the rot to continue. It has now stained the whole of the Conservative Party. So I don't actually think that they would get a mandate from the British public now, because they've failed so spectacularly in doing what the British public asked them to do.
Whatever happens, the Conservative Party is either about to elect the first ever non-white Prime Minister or the third female Prime Minister, all of whom have been Conservative. That's a bit embarrassing for the Labour Party, isn't it?
Well, we will get there. We have got our leader at the moment. I'm the deputy.
That's what I've heard every time.
I'm the deputy leader of our party, which means if we get into government, I will be the deputy prime minister, working class girl from the north.
It's not quite the same as the prime minister, though, is it?
Oh, it matters a lot, and it will make a big difference. And I think the Labour Party, come the next leadership election, I'm pretty certain we've got some magnificent talent in our party, and I think that we'll be able to showcase that come the next leadership election. But the leader we've got
a bit, though, mustn't it? That the Conservative Party have done better than you when it comes to the equality and diversity.
Diversity matters, sure. Diversity matters in terms of where people are from, etc. But diversity in terms of ideas matters as well. And at the moment, we're getting the same old policies and the same old ideas and the same old sleaze from the Conservatives at the moment. They haven't addressed the issues that people are facing, like the cost of living. Actually, most people will say, yes, diversity matters and it's great. However, if you're offering the same things and you're not actually making a difference to my life in the way I want them to, that matters more. And I think we can show that the Labour Party has changed since me and Keir took over, and that we can show that we've got a programme that can get us into government and change people's lives for the better.
You touched a bit about your own background there. You grew up in Stockport, you were a carer for your mum, you had a baby at 16. It is quite a different path from, the sort of well-trodden PPE at Oxford. Do you think that people underestimate you sometimes in Parliament?
people have underestimated me all my life, if I'm honest, you know, and I remember the stigma that I faced when I was a young mum at 16, and it still burns now, and that's why I'm so passionate about giving people opportunity and not, you know, some of the rhetoric that we've heard from Conservative ministers around, well, just work a little bit harder. The problem with you being on low pay is you just need to get a better job. Actually, I find that quite offensive, because when I was a low-paid worker, I was a casual worker, zero-hour contract care worker, and I was a young mum, I struggled then, and it was nowhere near as bad as the cost of living for those people today. And it's not about them not wanting to work harder. I think it's the Conservative Party are really out of touch with how people are really struggling today. People in work are really struggling and are frightened about what's going to happen come October when it's winter and their bills go up again and their cost of living and their food prices are going up. People are really struggling and not hearing from the Conservatives what they're going to do to challenge that.
What kind of stigma? You mentioned the stigma that you faced.
Oh, it's just like, oh, she speaks with an accent, she must be thick. I'll probably get that again after being on your show, unfortunately. I'm working class, so therefore, you know, we're not as good. If a posh guy from a private school walks in a room, he automatically gains respect. Oh, he's got a status. If I walk in a room, I have to earn the respect, because people look at me and look at me differently. And that's how society is, unfortunately. It's not unique for me. Many women and many working class people face those challenges as well. Many people from, many people of colour face the same level of discrimination as well. And it is a product of society, unfortunately, and we've got to change that. That's why I won't change the way I speak. That's why I talk about my background. It's because we can do better. And actually, the general public, when they see more of that and they see people in positions of power making a difference and really holding their own, then it changes that perception.
I was quite struck when you went toe-to-toe with Dominic Raab recently at Deputy Prime Minister's Questions. He said, she talks about working people. Where was the Right Honourable Lady when the comrades were on the picket line last Thursday? She was at the Glyndebourne Music Festival, sipping champagne and listening to opera. Do you think that's a kind of snobbery in itself?
Well, it is a snobbery in itself, actually. You know, I've always fought for workers all my life, and everyone knows that. My record is very clear on that, and I think the government have really failed to tackle some of the issues. They're in power and have really failed to tackle the issues that we face at the moment with endemic low pay for workers. Of course, they're angry, and they have my full support with that. But the idea that a working class person can't go to the opera, when actually I was there to visit a working class friend of mine who plays violin at the opera and has played violin there for 36 years and was proud to be there. I think that shows how out of touch he is. Actually, working class people can enjoy opera and should be able to go there. And in fact, the tickets to go to the opera were a lot cheaper than the tickets to go to Glastonbury. But hey, I wonder whether I'd have got the same stigma if I'd have been seen raving at Glastonbury.
Briefly, on that same outing, Dominic Raab winked. Right, I think actually you might better show the photo of him winking. Now, I asked him about this. He said he wasn't winking at you, he was winking at Ian Murray. Do you believe him?
I think he was winking at himself. I think he thought he did a really good job. It was really weird. Me and Rachel looked at each other and said, that was weird. It was just a very weird thing to do.
And just finally, now I know I'm going to ask this question. You're going to be studiously loyal to Keir Starmer. You're going to say that he is the person you want to see as the next Prime Minister. So we can just take that as a given. But do you think you've got what it takes to be Prime Minister?
Oh, do you know, I say this all the time. When originally I used to think there's no way that I could be Prime Minister of this country. You know, the fact that I got into Parliament, it's such an honour to represent my constituency of Ashton and Lyne. But since Boris Johnson has done it, I thought he set the bar so low that I actually think even Terry from the local pub could do a better job than what Boris Johnson has done. But actually, we need standards in public life.
So what's the answer then to this?
Yes, I think I could do it now. I think I could. And actually, I think it's really important that kids from my background do have that aspiration and think, you know what, you can do it. And I was guilty of thinking I couldn't do it because for all other reasons. I think there's always someone better than myself. And actually, I think on your show, speaking to people from my background, I should say, you could do whatever you want if you put your mind to it.
Quite fancy it?
I think it would be really daunting, you know. If I can't go to the opera, then God help me if I became Prime Minister.
OK. Thank you very much, Angela Rayner, there.